Welcome to Diversitas, a podcast at the crossroads of diversity, business, and culture. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us an old friend. I don't want to say how old because then I would be dating myself. Leroy Jones, who is the CEO. He actually has two jobs. He is the CEO of EREflow, which is a business growth consulting firm which helps clients to move from stagnation to aggressive growth through unique programs tailored to a business's stage of life. EREflow consults across many industries and has a particular emphasis on technology, product management, and sales strategies. Now, if that weren't enough, if he wasn't busy enough with EREflow, he also is the CEO of Diligent Pharma, which is a company which helps connect pharmaceutical clinical trial sponsors with vetted suppliers through its cloud-based diligent qualification platform. So Lee is in the business, both with EREflow and with Diligent Pharma, of solving problems for other companies and industries across this nation. And so we are very, very thankful that I was able to go to college with Lee, because otherwise I probably wouldn't be able to interview him today. So Lee, thank you very much for coming today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and high school too. So, although we were in different grades, I did that early admission thing. But yeah, it's ENS, man.
That's right.
That's right.
How could I forget about ENS? So tell me first about EREflow.
So EREflow is a company that I started after I sold my last company, GSI Health. And ultimately what we're trying to do is help companies be the best version of themselves. And we realized that version has a lot to do with their stage of life. And so we have three different kinds of initiatives that we try to help with. One is called Engage, and that's really for smaller companies or younger companies that are trying to really get into the rhythm of having a business, running a business, doing that early growth. Second is Refine. After you sort of get your groove going, there are a number of common business problems that you likely run into, and you have to refine your approach in order to account for them. And then the final is Execute, where we try to get on the ground with you and help you through fractional executive work, implement the plan that you have, and be much more specific to your longer term success. So that's what we do.
So you mentioned GSI Health, and I guess the question I have is, what made you want to start EREflow after your experience with GSI Health?
I ran GSI Health for 16 years, and it was, totally, for the first half of its life, it was totally bootstrapped. And then I went through a whole growth phase and raised money. And along that whole continuum, I felt that I learned lots and lots of lessons about how to do things with respect to business, which is, a million people out there who feel the same way and are doing the same thing. But my interest was, how do we take all of those lessons and make them broadly available? And so while today EREflow is focused on what I'll call management consulting, what we ultimately want to do is produce software that can automate the process of dispensing this business information in a useful way. So you have Google that does search. We want to have, what we call BusyFlow that dispenses answers about running businesses, and not just small trite answers like a search result, but detailed plans on how you do something.
That's very interesting. So walk me through that. Like, how would you automate those kinds of answers for those kinds of questions?
First thing is you have to have a common framework to express those answers. So right now you have a bunch of different people who are consulting, and you could hire me as your executive coach and hire someone else, and we may tell you similar things, but we say it differently, right? So if you can normalize how the answer is expressed, that's one thing. And then we just open up the world to everyone who feels like they have an answer and say, hey, say it in this language. And if you say it in this language, Now, someone who comes and needs an answer, they may need to get from A to D, and I've done A and B, you've done C and D. The engine can pull together our two, points of view and create an integrated plan for somebody who needs to get all the way from A to D. And so a lot of it is opening up the authoring of solutions in a specific way to all of the influencers and knowledge holders, and then providing an easy interface so that someone can ask a question and get the aggregate answer that comes from all these different places.
So do you invite influencers, folks who could provide answers to give you responses, or does your software kind of reach out into the ether and find responses and then kind of do what it does in terms of aggregating?
The former. So we want people to specifically design what it is that they're vending. And, a lot of them are already doing that, right? Through courses and other things. We're just saying, here's yet another menu. And because we'll sort of put it in, we'll give you a deed to it like an NFT, so that now if I come along and I need to, scale my company, and part of what I'm going to tell you about is needs to reference raising money. And, Michael Bowman has the ultimate process on raising money. Rather than me authoring that, I can just include what you have in what I'm saying about scaling a business. And now if I sold that, I give you a royalty, right? So now that we have NFTs and blockchain, we can automate the process of you getting compensated when other people build upon your expertise.
Interesting. So how's that going in terms of a sales proposition for potential buyers?
Well, right now, the company, so I am doing something that I did with GSI Health, which is I started it and bootstrapped it by doing consulting work. And so that sort of pays for the development of our MVP, et cetera. So we're sort of developing the MVP. We haven't gone out and, did the software part yet.
So you're doing that, but then you're also the CEO of Diligent Pharma. So tell us about that company.
Yeah, when I was running GSI Health, I was in a group called Vistage, which is a CEO group. We get together once a month in our sort of support for each other, similar sized businesses. And there was a woman, Patty Lushton, who was a CEO of a company called Evoca, and she started this second company called Diligent Pharma while she owned Evoca. And she was preparing to sell Evoca and needed someone to run this other company for her while she sort of transitioned into that acquirer. And so I did. And it was because I was, I had sold the company. I was kind of just starting EREflow and figuring out what needs to be done. Helping her with this is in the general mission of what EREflow is trying to do. And it also was, frankly, it was just an easier proposition to run than my old company was. The sale is easier, the impetus to buy is easier, and it was in pharma, which is different than what I was in before, healthcare. So I just jumped in. So the plan is, build it fast, grow it fast, and try to figure out what value you have in a short period of time.
So, with all these experiences, I mean, I know with GSI Health, you had an employee base. I know you have folks working with you with EREflow and with this other company. So I would assume that you've learned a lot about not only just business, but leadership, right? And so let's talk about GSI Health first. When you first started to grow it, what important management lessons did you have to learn to really grow that company the way that you wanted to grow it?
Management in particular.
Yes.
For me, a lot of the management came in learning how to manage a distributed workforce. So GSI started out, we started in 2003 and we didn't have a central office. Like now, virtual companies are just the norm, but back then they weren't the norm. And so everyone who worked for me was somewhere else, whether they were offshore or onshore in different parts of the country, learning how to keep the cohesion of a team in a deliberate way and foster a culture that will allow them to be effective, to get over my traditional need to just see you, to think that you're doing something, and find other ways to be able to measure productivity, to hold people accountable. And something that served me well in management was always really just being very transparent. For example, many people, I had a number of experiences with employees that I gave performance reviews to, who would say things like, I've never had a performance review like that. And it wasn't that they had bad performance reviews, but it often their managers would have sort of sugar-coated lots of things. You're great, you're wonderful. They used it as a opportunity to encourage, which is a strategy, right? To just encourage their employees. Whereas I use it as an opportunity to, my philosophy is, look, I believe you are the manager of your own perception. People are going to perceive you however they perceive you, and it's right or wrong, but you are the one who's generating the information that's causing that perception. So I'm going to tell you what the perception is, and then you can do with that information whatever you want. And it was different for a lot of people. They weren't used to people being told what people thought about them and how they came off. And but once they got into that, people started to manage their perceptions. And Mike thinks what I want him to think about me, as opposed to just he's forming an opinion that I'm not even trying to influence.
That's very interesting. So a couple of things from that. So number one, it sounds like you were ahead of the curve in terms of having a virtual workplace. So what tools did you use? I mean, were you using Zoom or something like Zoom prior to that, or like what tools were you using when everything was virtual?
Not like Zoom per se, but we did lots of conference calls. There was some video teleconferencing kind of stuff early days, although we didn't use that a whole lot because it was a little clunkier than it is now. Mm-hmm. But I think that more of it was in the paradigm. So having regular get-togethers to inform everyone of what everyone else was doing, to make sure that you did have some scheduled regular in-person contact. So we did once a quarter. Everybody has to come in. And when you get that contact, you allow for a big piece of it to be social. So people get to know and understand each other on a different level. So when they go back and they're just sitting at their desks, and you come on the screen, they have a different feeling about it. Right. Making sure that there are activities that are collaborative in a way that you don't just feel as though I've got my to-do list and then I shrink back into my own bedroom or wherever I work and I'm not a part of something else. And so using tools like today, you probably use things like Slack and all that, but having, interactive chats, meetings that are virtual that way, synchronizing at times was important. But the most important thing really was just being conscious of it and deliberately doing something that fostered the team to coalesce around what you were trying to organize them for.
So, I got to tell you, that's one of the most challenging things. I talk to employers all the time, and one of the most challenging things that they are facing is the fact that the world has changed, that they have a workforce that does not want to be in on a day-to-day basis, on a daily basis. So they're doing these, they're doing split schedules, 3-2 or whatever the case may be. And so one of the biggest challenges I think that they're facing is this notion of culture. How do you maintain culture? How do you create culture? I mean, a lot of these businesses were mature businesses. They had mature cultures prior to the pandemic, but now with all of this upheaval, those companies have to face this kind of new reality, So how were you able to create kind of a virtual culture. And do you still use that in your current positions?
A big part of it for GSI was we had these things called maxims. And so we had like 15 maxims, but they were, rather than have heavy policies that try to regulate how everyone did everything, we had principles that we all agreed on, not in detail. It should be one statement or whatever it is. And we put them together as a group. And so the maxims could change, but those maxims then served as the unofficial, self-policing guide, so that everyone understood, hey, this is, this is a maxim that says, I will over communicate to avoid, any confusion. And so that doesn't say you have to answer every email every time you get it, or you have to, do all these things. But the principle is there, is that I'm trying to make sure that other people understand. And so I think having that framework that you can always point back to, that's not so heavy that people have to try to, feel like have a lawyer present. But it does have. Oh, sorry, I forgot you're a lawyer. Yeah, no, we love lawyers. But having something that was external to everyone's opinion that we could all appeal to was key to that.
As you were talking about that, Lee, I was thinking about you as a young dude, and I didn't think about it at the time because I was a young dude, right? But you were always very, very mature for your age. Like even when you were, when you came to CMU, were you 16 or 17?
CMAP summer, I was 16. I turned 17 that summer.
I remember you were 16. And again, I didn't have the words for it, but there was a self-possession that you had that was, I think, probably not as normal as one would think. I mean, we went to a school where you had a lot of high achieving people who came in with us, but a lot of them were just, like me, we just weren't very mature, right? And so we did not, respond to, not me, because I lived with adversity pretty much. My whole academic career was about adversity.
I'm with you, bro. I'm with you.
but a lot of us didn't know adversity, and they weren't mature enough to really, address it. But you never, I never sensed that you had that issue. So it's not surprising to me. I say all I have to say. It's not surprising to me that you were you had that kind of in your wheelhouse as you were growing up, that you were kind of focused on, how can I was focused on how can somebody give me money. You were focused on how can I earn money for myself.
Yeah, I think I did. I don't know. I appreciate those comments. I don't know.
And that's not smoke. That's real. That's real talk. That is not smoke.
I don't, but it wasn't sort of a conscious thing. Like, I can't say I always wanted to own my own business, or I always wanted to, I just saw opportunities and was not afraid to take advantage of them, right? When it came to that kind of thing. And so, but you're right. When I did, it wasn't really until I got much older that I realized that everybody doesn't think that way. Nothing right or wrong. It's just people are made up differently. And what may come natural to me is not natural for someone else, which is why you don't have everybody being an entrepreneur, right?
Right.
Some people are never going to start a business, never going to, and that's fine. It's just, I didn't appreciate that was a distinguishing factor for me, and it led to me to have, probably more success than I would have if I just was an executive in some company or something.
So what led you to the idea that was GSI?
So I had worked from 1996 all the way up until 2003 when I started GSI, was in the healthcare IT field. And so the idea about building software that was used to make the healthcare system and ecosystem run better. And so when I started GSI, it really was to continue doing more of the same, because I was into building software. I understood that particular industry. It wasn't that I had a love for healthcare, it just happened to be what I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started off with, outsourcing different portions of technical stuff, doing database work, doing software work from those kinds of companies. Then I started to apply for different contracts, government contracts, because I was used to doing that as well, to support similar kinds of things. And we went from doing consulting to contract software development, to once we built software, we hosted it and operated it, and we did all of that stuff. And once I was hosting and operating software for other people, I said, why don't I just make my own? So then we wrote our own software product, and then became a SaaS company, software as a service, and started to jettison all of the work that we were doing on the professional services until we were sort of a pure technology play. So it was not sort of I don't know if it was a master plan. It was more like an evolution of things that just sort of got me where I was.
And so ultimately, when you did sell, you were strictly software development?
Software as a service company, yeah. So we sold.
Explain that model. Explain that model.
Sure. So it's really built around the idea of selling, two things. One, you contrast it with the old model of software where you bought software licenses. So you go into, CompUSA and buy Microsoft Office, and it's shrink wrapped, and you get a license to use that. This was sort of saying, well, really you need Microsoft Office to do something. So we're going to think of it more as a service, and you're going to pay me sort of a service fee in order to use it. You don't own the software, you don't need the license, you don't need to deploy it locally, et cetera. The other thing that's key in software as a service business today is the idea of annual, ARR, annually recurring revenue, or monthly recurring revenue. And so that is generally, can I have some sort of subscription to this technology and push as many services out of the picture as possible? So it's heavy automation, heavy self-service, and the asset does all of the work. And you charge people access to it. And that's probably the two fundamental things. Then you can do that obviously in a number of different industries, and we were doing it with healthcare.
In order for GSI to be attractive enough for somebody to buy it, how many clients did you have to be profitable and to show revenue growth?
We didn't have that many clients. I mean, we had probably 15 clients.
Okay.
And our clients were, but our annual revenue when we sold was probably like 12 million a year, 13 million a year, something like that. But SaaS companies, because we sold multi-year subscriptions. So we had a backlog of, $20 million yet to be recognized, right? And so that is what you can do when you sell these subscriptions and sort of have these ongoing commitments. And because of that, the multiple for my only 15 customers was a lot bigger,
Right.
So so there are different ways to do it.
Right. That's which is why you were able to sell. So because are you kind of going along the same path? You believe you're going along the same path with EREflow, or is that fundamentally different in terms of the path you see for it?
I think I'm a believer in a SaaS model, so I think that aspect is going to be similar, but how I built the company is going to be different. First of all, it has to happen in a much shorter period of time. I can't do another 16 years, and then we're starting out with the consultant, then transition, pivot into software. But that transition is, we know at the beginning where we're trying to go. Whereas with GSI, it was, oh, I could just get more contracts. It was a lifestyle business for a while. I wasn't thinking about the end game, whereas now I am. So I think my approach to it is very different.
And because this is different from what you were doing with GSI, did you have to start over in terms of attracting eyes to possibly look for as investors, et cetera? Are you even there to be looking at investors?
We don't have any investors, so I'm self-funding. But the good thing about consulting is it's instantly profitable, right? Charge more than it costs me, and all of a sudden I have money. So I have I haven't gone out to any investors for EREflow, that is. Diligent is something different. We'll raise some money for Diligent because we want to move faster, and using somebody else's fuel is important there.
So you started two businesses. They're obviously GSI was very successful. You were able to sell it. EREflow now is on that track in terms of being successful. So what are some keys that you can give to other entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs to success in terms of being an entrepreneur?
Well, for me, a few things in my short list would be, it helps to understand your own base personality, know thyself, because at the end of the day, you have to imagine there are people who are going to be successful entrepreneurs who are nothing like you. And they have a totally different perspective, totally different approach. Some people are very detailed. Some people are spur of the moment. Some people plan, some people instinct. And so it should tell you that your way is not the only way. But if you understand that, then you say, all right, what is my way? And how can I step away from my way of thinking when it suits the business well? And so if I'm naturally more methodical, planning, whatever, but it takes me long to do stuff, how can I train myself to make quick decisions when it's appropriate and move things along, even though it's not my natural way of doing things? So understanding yourself in that way. Second, I would say, is believing your own hype machine, in the sense of, lots of people will not see the vision of the entrepreneur, or at least not see it as well. And so you're going to inevitably come to a point where people don't really understand why you're doing it this way or what you're thinking about. And you have to be able to stare that down and convince yourself that you're right and move forward despite the people who don't really see it, and bring them along. And that's where you learn to meter out your vision, give people enough that they can digest and grab hold of and move forward with you. Not so much that they just throw up their hands and they're confused and think maybe you don't have it together. So finding that balance, I think, is another thing I'd say is important. And then a much more practical thing is, I think that entrepreneurs should take an accounting class, understanding how accounting works and doing your books and how to read financial statements and what it means, what gross profit means, and net profit, and what contributes to it. I think is just, once I learned that, and things weren't such a mystery about what it means to recognize revenue and all that stuff, it's just things that's got a lot clearer about business and what I was trying to do.
So what's interesting about that is, number one, you have tons of people, you have people that I know, who I deal with on a regular basis. They wouldn't know how to look at a balance sheet if it slapped them upside the head. So that is absolutely, I think, essential in terms of how people can understand what they're doing and the business that they're in. One of the last questions, at least on this segment, you talked about how you through EREflow helped other companies with their growth and development. Do you personally do any kind of mentoring of other entrepreneurs outside of EREflow?
I do. And not just outside of EREflow, even within EREflow, which I'll explain. So, but I am a part of something called Mentor Connect, and it's for a lot of the criteria is you have to either run now or have run a business from the CEO seat, and they have just this pool of mentors, and we have companies who come and want mentor teams, and we do pro bono mentoring in a team format. This was developed in MIT, and they're doing it here under an organization called PACT and the Ben Franklin Technology Partners. And so I have maybe 7 or so companies that I'm on their mentoring team, and they set up these meetings once every 6 weeks or whatever it may be, and we go through different things that they're going through. And the focus is not to judge their idea or their company and say this is good or bad. It's to develop the CEO so that the CEO can be stronger and be able to do what they need for their business. So I really enjoy that, and that's what I do outside. But I also have within EREflow a group called Parakaleo, and it has right now 5 different companies in it, and they're local, organically growing companies. So these are not companies that are going to raise money or do some big fancy software stuff. I have author, I have financial management company, HR company, et cetera. And so these companies, law and service, so these companies are trying to figure out how to grow beyond what you might typically expect for those categories of companies. Mm-hmm. How do I get from being a side hustle or any kind of hustle, or how do I go and not be a small company? I want to be a big company. We have a goal to say, you should be trying to, if you want to be bigger than a small company, you should be trying now to set your sights on making at least $7.5 million a year. Most companies don't make $1 million a year. Very small number of companies make $1 million a year. And I'm asking you to plan now as if you're going to make 7.5. And so we sort of take that mindset for entrepreneurs who want to grow. Not every entrepreneur wants growth. A lot of them want a lifestyle business. I want to be comfortable, do what I want to do. Personal finances are taken care of, and that's fine. But this is I want to be bigger. I want to get more territory, make this company big, and we try to foster that. So we have a monthly meeting. We do enrichments. We help them to understand financial principles and accounting and marketing and sales and other things like that.
It's interesting. I'm in the service industry, and the challenge with the service industry is you got your hours, right? And so that's your hour is your widget. And so oftentimes it is a challenge to think about how can I grow the business in a way that to get to 7.5 million in revenues if I just have this hour, right, that I'm dealing with on a regular basis.
Well, the answer is I got to get other people's hours, right?
Correct. Yes.
So
that is the answer.
Exactly.
That is the answer. That's true. All right, we got some rapid fire questions we want to ask you real quick before we get out of here. One word that describes you.
Empathetic.
Oh.
I have the ability to try to understand what other people are going through, and I think it helps me in business.
I love that. The best piece of advice you ever got?
Nobody cares about your excuses, so don't make them. Even good explanations are just fancy excuses.
I love that. What's a talent that you have that most people don't know about you?
I whistle really well. It's not only unknown talent, but a useless talent. But I enjoy it. And when people
vaguely remember that. I kind of vaguely remember that. Yes.
Many decades of practice now.
What would you consider to be your biggest success?
Being married for 30 years to the same woman.
Believe me, That is a major, major, major achievement. A major achievement. What book has had the biggest impact on you?
Outside of, I'm actually also an ordained minister. So outside of the Bible,
Right.
A book called The Mythical Man Month, which is an old book now from the 70s, but it really set my perspective about what it really takes to do something right. You know, you can't just do it and then it's, you know, what we call today the MVP, minimally viable product. You know, that's not a commercially viable thing. And so you have to go beyond just it works to get something of value.
Do you have an active ministry?
I'm an assistant pastor at Greater St. Matthew Baptist Church in North Philly, 16th and Wingo.
So not only do you have two businesses, you're helping with a flock as well.
Yeah, since the late 90s, man.
That's
you know.
That's tremendous. All right, last one. What's your favorite musical, or who is your favorite musical artist?
Can it be a group or does it have to be a single? I'm a big Earth, Wind, and Fire fan, so I'm a little old school in that way. EWF all day, man.
We are in the same, as everybody should know by now, we're in the same generation, so you get no argument from me on Earth, Wind, and Fire. Lee Jones, thank you so much, man. We appreciate your time. We know that you're a busy guy, and we thank you for being a part of our show today. Audience, we also thank you for your rapt attention to this great interview today. We look forward to continuing the discussion at Diversitas and keeping it going. Until the next time, take care.